This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And you're listening to Python's Paradise, your film and music show. And this is your host, DJ Python Hyena, a.k.a. Greg Gilbert. And I'm joined by
Shilo Sixx from Film Fantasy.
And we have a wonderful guest on here today. Somebody that I've known for a very, very long time. And please welcome the talented, the absolutely beautiful Belinda Balaski. Hello, Belinda.
Hello, how are you?
We're doing fine. We're happy to be talking to you. That puts a smile on my face first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh, how sweet.
Yes. So, you mentioned in the message you sent me that you teach. What do you teach?
Oh, I have an acting workshop called BB's Kids, which is I teach commercial classes and acting classes to kids from about 5 to 21. And I've been teaching for about the past 30 years.
Oh, nice.
I'm actually just starting to quietly close my doors by the end of this year, because I'm actually past wanting to teach at this point. I'm much more interested in painting right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've just started getting some interviews on here, podcasting this year. We do a radio show here on campus here in Fredericton, and it's been amazing talking to some of the cult film stars, it's been very overwhelming. And you, of course, probably the most famous thing you did was Gremlins, of course. And
well, that's interesting. I think a lot of people would say the Howling or Piranha, but yes, I guess Gremlins too, I've done 11 films with Joe Dante. So.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Joe Dante here, but actually, speaking of Joe Dante, did you ever hear the commentary track on Gremlins?
Not sure if I've heard that one.
Yeah, because it's one of the funniest commentary tracks I've ever heard on a movie.
He's a very funny man.
Well, Zach Galligan definitely makes fun of himself. But the moment you appear on screen with those two kids, one of them, of course, being a very young Nicky Cat, Joe Dante says that those hats on their head look like the tops of glue sticks.
Funny.
So, tell us about, overall the process of Gremlins.
Well, Gremlins was really funny because the night before I was supposed to shoot, I remember calling Joe because I had done a couple of films with him before that, and I called him around 8:30 that night saying, Joe, and he's like, yeah, and I'm like, I don't have a script, because normally they'll deliver a script, a day or two before you shoot.
Mm-hmm.
When you audition, normally you just get sides, you audition those sides, and then if you get the job, then you wait and get the script eventually, a couple days before you shoot. So you don't usually have very much time with it. But now it's the night before, and I had never auditioned, and I had no idea what it was that I was supposed to be doing, and I'm waiting for the script. Anyway, I called him and I said, I don't have a script. And he said, a what? And I said, a script. And he said, neither do I. What are you talking about? And he said, don't worry about it. Just come in and ad-lib. I said, but wait a minute. I don't even know what a gremlin is. He said, neither do I.
Wow. That's fantastic.
When you teach
I said, what, are you kidding? And he said, no. He said, just come in and ad-lib. I said, come in and ad-lib with Polly Holiday? That's like ad-libbing with Carol Burnett or something. Do you know? I said, okay, fine. I said, just give me an idea who you want me to be, So he said it gives me this idea. So I kind of panicked, and the next morning I walked in with a wad of paper saying, look, I panicked. Would you read through these and see if you like anything that I've said here? And he came back to my trailer a little while later. He said, I love the first scene. Take it to Polly and let her come up with her line.
Yeah, Joe Dante said he remembered Polly Holliday being an absolute joy to work with. And of course, she played Mrs. Deagle, and she looked like she was having fun.
She was deliciously awful, just like Mrs. Deagle was supposed to be. She was just wonderful. I mean, literally, I walked into her trailer, ad-libbed my lines to her, and she looked right at me and said, "Now you know what to ask Santa for Christmas, don't you?" I said, "Oh, my God." And I looked at Joe, and he said, "I told you I'd be fine." I mean, she's just right on the money, you know. That was ad-lib.
Yeah,
it was ad-lib, but I mean, she just came up with that perfect closer, you know.
And you only had like a couple of scenes in Gremlins. And
Joe always wanted to have this repertoire company where he used, you know, like 8 or 10 actors in every film that he did. And in a sense, he was able to do that with myself and Dick Miller. And, you know, there are a few of us he used over and over again. And it didn't matter if we would play big parts or little parts. We were just kind of having fun, you know. No one ever dreamed they would become classics or anything, you know.
I think Gremlins has definitely stood the test of time as one of those horror themed classics. Oh yeah, I mean, you know, when you know it came out a year before I was born, and I remember watching it sometime around 88 or 89, and I laughed.
Wait, how old are you in 88 or 89?
I was about 4 or 5 years old.
My goodness, you shouldn't be watching Gremlins.
Yeah, I know, it was on TV.
I was born in 1972.
I was born in 85.
Oh my goodness.
The movie was on TV. It was on the Space Channel. And I remember sitting there watching it. And I remember saying to my mom, I think the next day, "I want a Gremlin." And Mom looked at me and like, "What the hell is he talking about?" And then I told her, I said, "I watched this movie called Gremlins." And she freaked.
What are you watching that? Oh my goodness. I can't even believe. You know, I've heard... now they send us to these conventions, which is actually quite fun. And I mean, I just hear these stories from people that are young, so young, and you go, "Wait, how old were you when you saw this movie?" And it does tend to be a story much like that, where they thought quite young, weren't afraid, but really loved it. And it just, usually it's a parent or a babysitter or somebody, you know, that tends to like them and starts watching them, and they see them, and it's a really funny thing because they grow up or have grown up on a lot of these old movies.
Well, like I remember saying to my mom, "I want a Gizmo," and that's what clued her in. And I remember, what? Oh no, okay. And then when she found out I watched it, I actually went to the store looking for a little plushie of Gizmo. Well, I found him like 15 years later in Bangor, Maine, and I still have him. I have a little plushie of Gizmo.
Does he make the little song?
Sadly, no.
The little Howie Mandel song.
Yeah, sadly, no. And he doesn't squeak. He's just a plushie. But he's one of my prized possessions. I've had him for, at least 15 years now.
So, did you hear that they're thinking about remaking this film?
Yes, they do tend to get around to doing that eventually with
sadly
most of them. Sadly, can't quite imagine it, but
I'll tell you one thing. As a film critic, I will not review it at all. There's certain movies, Gremlins definitely being one of them, especially from my childhood, where it just can't be remade, and if they do it, it's for a cash grab, and it's not worth reviewing or not worth wasting my time on, because I know what the original is, and the original is kind of sacred and special in its own way.
Kind of like Piranha. I haven't seen the remake.
I've seen the original Piranha, and it's a very I'll say it's an underrated film. It's low budget, it's underrated, but it is an entertaining film. It's a take on, I guess, the slasher genre at that time with fish, and it's entertaining. But the remake was just convoluted and stupid.
Well, I've never seen it.
The remake was absolutely stupid. The only thing they got that looked good was the Piranhas. Other than that, it was dumb. Python, you've reviewed Piranha 3D.
kind
Yeah,
of
it was
ugly.
Yeah, it was
Pretty
bad.
pretty
It was
bad.
very bad. Christopher
Kind of
Lloyd
like
couldn't
the
even fix
Howling
it.
2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 12, 15.
Oh yeah, I've seen the first two,
Oh.
and the original was very good, and the second one was pretty bad in its own way. But I didn't even bother with the others.
Yeah.
Here's a problem though. It's all about cash, and what's going to happen is they're going to end up avoiding some very, very small things that made Gremlins special. And I'll give you an example. Hoyt Axton was so good playing the inventor / dad, and this whole subplot involving the bathroom buddy and all that. I guarantee you they're going to ignore that, and people love that. Even when there's no Gremlins on the screen, every time Hoyt Axton is on screen, he steals it.
I know.
Yeah, I've actually reviewed it.
Him, and I just love him. He's just so wonderful to work with, and he's so underrated. He really is.
And another thing too, an underrated part, and they'll avoid this in the remake, is the late great Don Steele, who of course was Screamin' Steve Stevens in Rock and Roll High School, and he does the voice of Rockin' Ricky Rialdo, and hearing his voice all through Gremlins is hysterical.
Well, Joe's such a film buff, I mean, that's all of these elements are what makes him so politically charged, whether it's film buff wise or, politically wise. He's always got some tongue-in-cheek thing going on, some Ginsberg book sitting on the table,
I think my biggest problem with a remake would be I don't want to see someone create another Gizmo. I like the original Gizmo.
You want to hear the story of that?
Yeah, I'd love to.
The art director kept presenting Spielberg with all these different, pictures of potential gizmos, and he just didn't like them, and they kept trying. No matter what they came up with, he didn't like it. And Joe said, look, he just got these two little, what are they called, King Charles, those dogs?
I think so. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
King Charles?
Yep.
Like a spaniel?
Yep.
Anyway, he just had gotten two of them, and he said he loves these dogs. He just thinks they're so cute. Why don't you make Gizmo look like that? And that's how Gizmo got to be how he looks.
He's definitely one of my favorite horror comedy icons. Oh yeah, like I said, he sits on my bed there up on the top shelf there. I've had him for such a long time, and I wish he was alive.
Well, now you know how he got his look.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Gremlins, I've reviewed it. I gave the film a 9 out of 10. I've really enjoyed it, and it's one of my favorite films from a very early childhood.
I think if I was to make one change to Gremlins, I probably would have allowed Polly Holiday and I'm sorry, I forget the actor who played the teacher, the one that was killed in the classroom.
I don't know. I don't remember.
He had kind of an Eddie Murphy comedic vibe to him. I probably would have let them live. Yeah, even Polly Holiday,
Those moments are written, I guess. Well, not that we had a script, but I think character-wise, they knew who would live and who would die. They usually know at least.
I didn't even think of it as that kind of film when I first saw the title to it. On the TV, Gremlins, and thought, okay, didn't really have internet back then, so I remember seeing the title on the TV and thought, Gremlins, this could be cool. And I saw, as it was starting, it looked like a family comedy, sort of speak, and then all of a sudden, these things are killing people. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. It took a completely different twist and turn, and I thought, and that sequence where they're in the dark and they're coming out of the fog, then they're just kind of waddling to themselves. I love that sequence. It makes me laugh every time I see it.
I know, it's so well.
They're the size of a football.
The visuals are just amazing.
Oh, absolutely. They're the size of a football. Just give them a boot, but yet they're managing to attack everybody.
Exactly.
Yes, and I think that's the comic effect to it that works.
So tell me, what was it like working with Phoebe Cates?
Well, I never really had a scene with Phoebe, but I mean, I certainly met her quite a few times on this set, and she's a doll. I mean, she's a darling girl, you know, no way around it. She's a sweetheart, you know.
She was every boy's childhood crush, including mine.
Just a genuine love, you know.
Yeah, you know, you get that, if you've watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you get that feel from her almost immediately that she is a loving little doll.
A really nice person, yeah.
So Dick Miller, you've worked with him a lot of times. He's a funny kind of character. What's he like?
Dick is the best character ever. He's amazing. I mean, I've done 11 films with Dick. But in all of those 11 films, we've literally only done one scene together, and that's the scene in the Howling in the bookstore. And but you know, we've been in all these different movies, so we've known each other for years. And he's just a great guy. He's just really funny, and he's been in every movie you've ever seen back from the 30s or 40s.
Oh, I'll agree with that.
In fact, when we did an HBO movie called Runaway Daughters, some of it was filmed at a drive-in. And inside the drive-in, they actually, you know, where they have the movie posters, they put all these movie posters of old Dick Miller films that he had starred in back in the day, you know. So here's Dick, you know, in his 20s and 30s, being this handsome, debonair guy, and it was just awesome. I loved it, quite frankly.
Did you like working with Judge Reinhold?
What was that like?
I never have a scene with him.
Oh, he's in the bank scene there when you're talking to the bank manager.
I'm talking to Eddie Arnold.
Okay.
Yeah, my scene is with Eddie, and it's funny because Eddie and I had I've done 3 different things with Eddie, and the very first thing I ever did with Eddie was a Chevy commercial up in Yosemite. We were up there for almost a week shooting this incredible Chevy clearance thing, and it was fabulous because we all got to know each other so well, and Eddie was up there, and I met him then, and then I met him again on Gremlins, and I did something else with him, some other TV show with him. It's funny how, you know, certain actors keep kind of passing each other, you know, you tend to have the same brothers or sisters or, you know, husbands, or it's a funny kind of business like that, you know.
Judge Reinhold, that's a name I haven't heard for a long time. I used to really like him back in the day. Beverly Hills Cop series, he was funny. I still go back every time I watch Beverly Hills Cop. It's one of my favorite action comedies, mostly for Eddie Murphy. But I think Judge Reinhold was the perfect side character for that, and he's just such a bumbling idiot in the film. It just works so well.
You also, you did The Howling, and I'm going to tell you, 1981, we had 3 werewolf movies. I've not seen Wolfen, but I have to say I love An American Werewolf in London, and I love The Howling, and I like them both equally. And, of course, you worked with Dee Wallace in that film. She did a film somewhere handy to where we are called Killing Ruth the Snuff Diaries. She did with Doug Sutherland, who's a filmmaker here. And, yeah. What was Dee Wallace like?
Oh, she's a sweetheart. I don't know that film at all, but Dee and I've worked a couple of times. We also did Runaway Daughters together, and we've done a lot of the conventions together, you know, and we just have a really good time. We've just known each other for so long, you know.
Yeah, she's somebody I'm going to try to see if I can get on here for an interview. I think she's pretty awesome.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No, I loved her in E.T.
Yes.
Of course. She plays the mom. She's fiery, feisty, and awesome.
She's a darling. She really is.
Now, you had a much bigger part in The Howling. I always feel so sad when you get offed in the movie.
I know. It's something I've been meaning to speak to Joe about. You know, in The Howling, the part of Terry Fisher was not actually in the book of The Howling. But John Sayles had written Piranha, and he wrote this character of Betsy, and when he saw the film, he liked so much, I guess, what I had done with that character that he took what he saw me create as that character and wrote her into this character of Terry Fisher and put her in The Howling. And I was actually living in Hawaii at the time that they were casting The Howling, and Joe told me they were in the middle of casting, and I'm like, do you want me to fly back? And he's like, no. And I'm like, but wait, I need to audition, don't I? And he said, no, you already have the part. And I said, well, why are you holding auditions? And he said, because we have to. And I'm like, but I should fly in and audition. And he said, what if you blow it? I said, okay.
Impossible.
Anyway, after that, he made me audition for everything, but I didn't audition for that. But John Sayles had actually written that part for me, and so it was really exciting to play it, and then to eventually meet John in The Howling and work with him in the mortuary scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was when I finally met him, and that was the day that he told me that he had written the part for me, and I didn't even know.
The Howling. I saw that for the first time about 10 years ago. I actually didn't. I actually saw it for the first time about 10 years ago. I'm a journalist, so I go to the public library a lot, and where I was at the time, the public library had it. Anybody, I guess, of any age could get it. So anyway, I got the movie because I knew it was a classic, and it was one that I had been meaning to see. It just slipped away from me, and I watched it. And I actually liked it better than An American Werewolf in London. I thought the film added a real intensity in terms of horror, and I thought the film added an original story to it that I really liked. That's
John Sayles, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I don't know. I've never seen American Werewolf in London.
It's a good film. It is a good film, but The Howling has this...
Wolfen, because I didn't feel... everything came out at the same time, and I thought, I can't go see those,
Right.
I'm in this one, so I didn't. And I do, at some point, I figure I'll see them, but I haven't even seen them yet, so...
Actually, Wolfen, I saw
read John
15 years ago.
I haven't seen them yet.
I saw Wolfen at least 15 years ago. I don't remember it at all, but The Howling, it added a real scary intensity to the film, and the special effects were great. The story was great, but there's one actor in the
brilliant. That's Rob Bottin, and that was cutting edge, and that's what's made it a classic. Because
I agree.
He can be as brilliant as possible, but if the other end of the film isn't being held up with the special effects, we just look like idiots,
There's one...
Because half the time, in fact, we finished the movie and the werewolf was never done. We came back 3 months after the movie had been wrapped to do all our close-ups with the werewolf. But we had already done to do our two shots. We had already done all our close-ups. And then we're now trying to match our close-ups in two shots with the werewolf. And at the time we did our close-ups, we didn't know how big it was, what it would look like, what it could do. We didn't have a clue about any of it. And now 3 months later, we come back to finish, and my hair is literally about 2 inches longer. And I told the hair lady, and she's like, no, I have Polaroids. And I'm like, no, it's longer, and you should cut it. And she's like, no, it's not. Anyway, if you watch that scene with myself and the werewolf, you will see my hair go boop, 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 up and down if you watch it in slow motion, because literally you'll see what was shot 3 months later by the length of my hair.
The Howling is actually one I'm going to be reviewing next month, actually, for October, and I'm very much looking forward to that. There's one actor in the film, and I was wondering what it's like working with him. That would be Dennis Dugan.
Well, Dennis was always off to the baseball game, so I don't know. He was never really available most of the time. He was very into baseball, and he seemed to be missing in action quite a bit.
Well, he's missing in action now, too.
I don't know. I mean, we had our scenes together, but, in between he was off busy.
Oh.
Well, his character...
Something about baseball, I don't know. Maybe he was... I think he didn't direct a film about baseball. Maybe he was in the process of it. I don't know.
I know he's directed a lot of Adam Sandler's films for the last 15, 20 years.
Well, his character was a horrible boyfriend because you were beautiful. I would never let you go down there by yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm like, man,
Casting is everything, isn't it?
Yes.
I would never have let you go down there, but it's like at the end of the film, how does he live with himself?
Exactly.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, and he's standing there.
Yeah,
He's
right
standing there
around
feeling
his
sorry for
mouth,
himself.
At least.
Yeah, he's standing there feeling sorry for himself. I remember that scene now. Oh yeah, Dennis Dugan.
One actor I do want to ask you about, it's unfortunately she's no longer with us, and I absolutely loved her, was Elizabeth Brooks.
That's correct.
What was she like?
Well, she was a really good friend of mine, and I miss her and love her very much. You know, she was a great gal.
She was like a gothic kind of werewolf, and very sexy. And that scene there in the woods where she's having sex with that guy, I'm like, this was
That guy is Chris Stone. Yeah.
that was much better than 50 Shades of Grey.
Anything was better than 50 Shades of Grey.
That guy, Chris Stone, was Steve Wallace's husband, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Boy, he had good taste.
Difficult, no, he did not show up on the set that day.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Dee Wallace, she is gorgeous, Dee Wallace Stone. Yeah.
Yeah, Elizabeth, Alyssa, as we call her, is, you know, she was just a firecracker. She really was. I love and adored her.
Sounds like you guys had a lot of fun on the set for The Howling. Was, you know, what else about the set, you know, do you remember that was the most fun, the most entertaining, besides working with, of course, Joe Dante?
Let's see, maybe watching 30 guys blow through straws.
You worked with Slim Pickens as well. What was he like?
Well, I didn't actually work with Slim, but yes, we were in the same film, and it's Slim Pickens. I mean, come on.
Yeah, he speaks for himself.
I have to admit, I'm like, oh my God, it's Slim Pickens, and I had to go the night that John Carradine worked, because it was John Carradine, and I was just so thrilled to meet him. And then after, maybe before. I think it was before. I had done Cannonball with Bobby and with David Carradine.
Yeah, I was reading about that this morning, actually. You know, I woke up to this glorious morning, and I looked up a little bit about you, and I noticed that you had worked with one of the Carradines.
Both of them.
Both
David
of them.
and Bobby, and then John.
John
The Cannonball starred David Carradine
Yeah,
and
that's
Veronica Hamill. And Bobby and I were in another car. Bobby Carradine and I were in the Corvette, actually. But it was a cast of thousands. It was like a bunch of different cars racing across the nation, you know. So each car was filled with some names or another. Do you know? If you look at, Sylvester Stallone was in. Everybody was in this movie, Cannonball.
Yes.
It was directed by Paul Bartel. And anyway, so yeah, it worked with them, and then I didn't actually work with John Carradine, but I just had to meet him.
He kind of had that werewolf kind of facial features too. The way that
you just always wanted to shoot him with a black and white camera. You know, he just had this amazing face.
I heard that on the commentary track to it. I love to listen to the commentary tracks, and I guess every day he wanted his Chips Ahoy, I guess cookies. That was what he wanted.
That's funny. I don't know. Everybody's got their thing, I guess.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So between especially Gremlins and The Howling, what do you think of them all these many, many years later, the reputation that they've managed to uphold?
Well, you know, to be honest, it's shocking and of course pleasantly so. But I really didn't have any idea that any of this was going on until, I guess, sort of Facebook, because suddenly people were contacting me and inviting me to conventions and asking me to do pods and, you know, various different interviews and a lot of different things about it. And I realize now that that day is over, you know, the day of the cutting-edge special effects that men like Baker and Rob Bottin actually created, and not CGI'd.
I agree.
It's a completely different craft, and it's a completely different time, and it was a time when independent films, when we did The Howling, I didn't get paid very much money, do you know what I mean?
Right.
It was an independent film, and you didn't really know even what the movie was about. You just auditioned some sides and got cast, and you're like, okay, let's go do it, and you're so happy to just be working that, never having a clue how brilliant the people you're working with really are, because that is John Sayles, Joe Dante, Rob Bottin, the cast, and every single person on that crew that made that what it is, And now they try to imitate these things by CGIing something that people put their heart and soul in, and it does not have that feeling of camaraderie or sweat.
I agree with you on that, Belinda. I think
soul is missing. There's no thump anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Film in this day and age, it's all special effects done with computers and CGI stuff. But back then,
once removed, you don't feel it.
Everything back then was all done practical. Everything done back then was talent.
And we had stories.
Yeah, and
Right. And there were characters.
You look at The Howling now, and you see it as it is. It's a classic film. I could not see The Howling being made in this day and age, even as an original piece for the first time. I think when the movie was made, it was made at the right time.
That's right.
And if someone out there tried to make it now,
absolutely cutting edge time. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and if someone tried to make it now, it would just be the junk. Most of just the junk that's out there now. Horror films.
Well, I don't know. No, I think if you had the same components, if you had John Sayles and you had Joe Dante and you had Rob Bottin and you had the same you can't make them as hungry as we were back then.
Right. That's exactly.
Everyone was pretty hungry, and everybody was pushed to do the best job they possibly could.
Yeah.
I remember moments like, Joe saying, "Now don't jump out the window," and I remember turning around to John Hora, who was a brilliant cinematographer, and whispering in his ear, "Don't cut, I'm gonna jump."
Right.
Because I didn't want some stunt girl who looked twice my size to suddenly jump out the window and destroy that illusion. Plus I was literally jumping 1.5 feet. And there was a mattress below me. So, you just want to do it. You want it to be the best it can be. And that's what I mean about heart and soul. There's no, for me,
No, I totally agree with you. Back then, films...
Rob picking on me, okay, and my death scene, okay? Literally. Of course, the next day when they wanted to shoot more, I said, "Could we get someone else to do it?"
So we're going to go way, 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 way back. According to Internet Movie Database, your first film was, Black Eye, is it?
Oh, well, that was a movie made for TV. It was actually for Fred Williamson. It was to become a episodic. They were hoping it was a pilot, for him, which didn't end up being, but it was directed by Jack Arnold.
Okay. And then you went on to do Food of the Gods. Now there's a classic.
Right.
Giant rodents.
That's Burt Gordon, huh?
Giant rodents.
Giant rodents.
Giant rats.
You played a pregnant woman in the film.
Yes, actually I did.
So what was your experience like for Food of the Gods?
Food of the Gods was great fun because I had, it was shot up in Canada, a little to the left of you, on Bowen Island off of Vancouver. And I had gone before, maybe, 3 or 4 years prior to that, I had done a film called Locust with Ben Johnson and Ronnie Howard and Catherine Hellman up in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. And when I did that one, I met, a bunch of crew guys, and, I was there a week, and it was great fun. And then when I went to Bowen Island, suddenly all the same crew guys were there. It was like the same family. It was really interesting, and it was quite a distance from Lethbridge. But I realized that there's this handful of guys that work all the movies up there, you know. So it was really fun to be able to see a bunch of old friends. Felt like family. We were on this amazing island. I don't know if you know Bowen Island, but it's incredible. And we were only supposed to be there something like 10 days, and within about 3 or 4 days, it started to snow. And Bert wanted this sort of gray, rainy look, and suddenly everything was white. And so we waited for it to burn off, but it didn't. It kept snowing. And we're in the middle of the ocean, and he's like, why is it snowing? It's not supposed to snow here. And it kept snowing. And finally, Bert's out there with huge torches blasting at the snow, trying to burn it off so that we could finish the film. But I loved every second of it. You know, it was great fun running around with a padded baby in my tummy. And Marjo was just an incredibly amazing human being. And I had, of course, done Bobby Joe and the Outlaw with him before in New Mexico. And so now here we were up in freezing cold Canada doing Food of the Gods, and that was great fun.
I'll agree with that freezing cold Canada part.
Well, yeah, it was.
Pretty cold down here.
Really, it was snowing and cold up there, but it was
that's Canada. We're definitely known for that. We're down here in the east, so it gets quite cold down here.
You got a different kind of cold. I mean, Bowen Island was like a Christmas picture, you know, compared to, I think, what you got.
So Food from the Gods, very similar to American Werewolf in terms of effects. Would that be correct?
Like I said, I didn't see American Werewolf.
Not American Werewolf. I'm sorry, The Howling.
Oh, The Howling.
I got my
Not
werewolf.
Really. Much more puppets in Food of the Gods, and then Bert had his rats. He loved his rats. Let me tell you, he really loved his rats. He took very good care of his rats, and he had them names for each and every one of them.
Wow.
You mentioned Bobby Joe and the Outlaw, and I'm just about to talk about that. I've never seen the film, but I'm very familiar with it because you were in the film with Mary Lynn Ross is in that film, and she was in a film in 1982 under the direction of Mark L. Lester called Class of 1984, a film that I am familiar with, and I've interviewed Lisa Langels on here back in June, and she was in Class of 1984, and I discovered through the commentary track that when there's a scene where there's a film being watched on television, and in the commentary track, Mark Lester mentions that it's Bobby Joe and the Outlaws with Linda Carter.
I love it. That's really funny. Well, Mary Lynn's a really good friend of mine. In fact, our children ended up going to school together, so we've known each other all throughout these years. And at the time, or prior to casting Bobby Joe and the Outlaw, she and I were in a workshop together with an acting teacher named Lou Dressler, who had done Truck Stop Women. And Mary Lynn and I were friends then. And at the time that she and Mark decided, they were boyfriend and girlfriend, that they decided to do Bobby Joe and the Outlaw, she brought him into the workshop to look at all the actors that were there. And most of the film, or a lot of the film, was cast out of there. Myself, Linda Carter, Mary Lynn, Peggy Stewart, who played Linda Carter's mother. Let me see. Well, Virgil Fry is in it. Jimmy Gammon is in it. Everybody is in this movie. I mean, it's quite a cast. And that was actually my very, very first film. You say Black Eye, but Black Eye was done for television, and this was Bobby Joe and the Outlaw was my very first movie. And so it holds a super special place in my heart.
Mm. I've contacted Mary Lynn Ross to have her come on. I haven't heard back yet, but I would love to get her on here.
Oh, I'll send her a message. If you send me a little Facebook message, then I'll send it on to her and tell her I just finished doing one with you guys.
Yeah, I sent one through her webpage. She's got kind of an anti-bullying webpage going on there. But sometimes I never know whether some people respond to me through their webpage, and some people, like Like Jessica Harper responded through our webpage to us, and some people respond through Facebook. So I never know.
Well, I'll let her know.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Love to talk to her.
Is that something you could possibly do with Phoebe Cates as well?
With Phoebe, no, I don't really have contact with Phoebe anymore. She's, married and lives in New York. And,
okay.
She married well. Kevin Kline, great actor.
Yeah, I think they're pretty happy.
Yeah. But Bobby Joe, I've never seen it. I've just seen that clip in Class of 1984, and that's how
now you're gonna have to see it. You're gonna have to see it because actually I love it. I think it's a really cute little film. It has its, it's done on a very low budget, so it has its, issues with things could have been filmed better, but. I think it has a real heart and soul to it, and the cast is wonderful, and I think everybody put their all into it.
Oh, what was your part in the film? Tell us about your part.
Well, I created this character because after I got cast, I went to meet Linda, and she's like twice my size and has this amazing face and body, and
she's Wonder Woman.
When I drove home, I got back to my house and I called Mark Lester immediately. I said, "Look, Mark, I just met Linda, and this is great and everything, but do you mind if I dye my hair red, have beveled glasses made, and gain 30 pounds?" And he started laughing. "Why?" he said. I said, "I can't compete with her on film." And he said, "I love the red hair, I love the glasses, but you're not allowed to gain an ounce." I said, "Okay." So I just completely wanted to go, how Best Friends Never are the two beautiful girls. It was like the gorgeous one and the sort of geeky one. And I just thought it made a better film picture than to try to compete with Miss Universe or Miss World or whatever she was. She's quite beautiful, and so I went the opposite. And so it was really very fun. I had a really good time working on that and playing this character and creating this character of Essie.
I'm going to say this. I think you're quite beautiful.
Thank you.
Very modest,
so wait till you see this. This is my fun character.
You got nice eyes.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, you do. They really stand out, especially in that scene in the Howling where you go close to that window and the dog jumps up there.
At the screening, I was the only person that screamed in the audience.
Now I want to see Gremlins and the Howling. I know what I'm doing today.
Funny.
And you also, of course, you mentioned Cannonball, which was directed by Paul Bartel. What was he like to work for?
Well, Paul is completely mad and crazy and wonderful. He just has this left-sided sense of humor that is just hard to explain. If you haven't seen Eating Raoul, I don't know what to say.
I've seen it, yeah.
But Cannonball was preceded by Death Race 2000, so in a sense it's an extension of that. And it was just so much fun to work on it because everybody was out in the desert having this amazing time. In fact, I remember I lived in L.A. and it was 2.5 hours out to the desert, and they sent a driver to pick me up, right? And here comes this little guy. He's maybe, I don't know, he looked like he was 15, maybe he was 17. Honestly, he probably didn't even have a license, if you know what I mean. These were low-budget films. Anyway, so I'm stuck in the car with this guy I don't know for 2.5 hours, so we strike up a conversation. "Hi, what's your name?" "Mike Fennell." I said, "Oh, hi, Mike. I'm Belinda Balaski." And so what do you want to be when you grow up, Mike? "I want to be a producer." "You want to be a producer? Really?" He said, "Yeah, but I want to start from the beginning so I know everything." Well, that's who ended up producing The Howling.
Yeah, he did Rock and Roll High School as well.
And a few hundred other things. But I met him when he was like a child. He wasn't. We were all children. But, I still have images of Mike on that drive. Always. I will always carry Mike Fennell as this person driving that little green car of his.
And, of course, Mary Warrenov was in that as well. We all love her.
I love Mary Warrenov. She is so gothically wonderful and such a great artist now, too.
Yeah. Yeah, she, of course, went on to also, speaking of Mike Fennell, she played Miss Togar in Rock and Roll High School.
She is awesome. I mean, she could play anything. She and Paul Bartel were like, a perfect match for each other and working together.
Yes. And, of course, you were, of course, in Piranha. Kevin McCarthy was in that, and also in
Howling.
The Howling. Did you work with him at all?
Well, yeah, I do. In The Howling, we have the scene in the station,
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, but Kevin and I knew each other from Piranha, although we didn't have a scene together in Piranha. We were all up on each other there in San Marcos. It's a very small, very small country town with like one place to eat, like a pizza parlor. And so, like, after that, we would drive to Austin every night to have dinner, but it was a whole cast and crew of people going together. So we actually got to know each other quite well on that one. And Kevin is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. I mean, drop to your knees funny, He opens his mouth and you cannot help but land on your knees laughing.
Did you see him in UHF?
Huh?
Did you see UHF?
Mm-mm.
That was a movie that Weird Al Yankovic did in 1989, and Kevin McCarthy plays the antagonist in it, and he is side-splittingly funny in it.
He can play anything. That man was just like magic. He was like Mercury, You touch it and he splits into 20 characters right in front of you.
Well, if you want to see him really funny, I'd recommend you watch UHF.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's really funny in that. He plays opposite Weird Al, so talk about an interesting dynamic.
How did you come about with the movie Piranha?
How did I get Piranha? Okay, so that's actually a story. I had done Bobby Joe and the Outlaw, and Tina Hirsch was editing it, and Mark Lester did not have an editing bay, so they called Roger Corman and said, do you think we could use the editing bay at New World? And he said, of course, come over. That's how Roger is, He's the seed of a million careers. And so Tina came over to New World and started editing there, and she happened to be sitting next to this little guy named Joe Dante, who was editing his first film called Hollywood Boulevard. And so they would lean over and go, what do you think of this cut? And what do you think of this cut? So actually, that's how Joe first met me, because he was watching her edit Bobby Joe and the Outlaw. But I didn't know that. And so then I had done Black Eye with Jack Arnold, and his daughter Susie Arnold was in the movie Black Eye, and so she and I met on the set. Well, years later, she now went into casting. So she was casting this movie called Piranha with Joe Dante. So now Susie calls me in to come in to meet Joe Dante, who I've never heard of before, and I go in, and he says to me, "Hi," he says, "You and I were in a movie together." And I went, oh, God, what movie? I'm trying to think, it's like, who is this person and how do I know them, right? And I'm racking my brain. And all of a sudden I realized, I went, oh, my God, you were the mechanic in Cannonball, that greasy little slimy mechanic. And he started laughing. And he said, I am. And then he told me how he was sitting next to Tina Hirsch and watched me, all the different cuts from Bobby Joe and blah, blah, blah. And that's sort of how it all began.
Oh, wow.
Wow. And, of course...
Funny how these little braids happen, huh?
Yeah.
And, of course, you went on to do Amazon Women on the Moon.
One of my personal faves.
Piranha wasn't your favorite?
It's one of my favorites. They finally let me do comedy, and I don't even die.
Wow.
These are big pluses, both of them, okay? I don't know if you saw it or not, but, did you see it?
I actually have not seen Amazon Women on the Moon.
Oh,
We don't have any video stores here anymore.
That's a shame.
Netflix, probably. No, you have to see Amazon. I mean, it is really funny, and it's, 4 or 5 different directors, and it's really, well, like I say, I finally get to do comedy, and it's Bob Picardo and I love it. And Archie Hahn. It's very fun.
And of course, you
And of
also.
course, I'm doing comedy I'm roasting next to people like Steve Allen and Henny Youngman and Slappy White. And
There you go.
it's really scary.
And then you went on and you were in Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Right. And Gremlins, too. Very fun.
You weren't playing the same character, were you?
Oh, no. I'm a completely different character. I'm in a movie theater with a daughter, and the film supposedly the film breaks, and they put on some risque film, and I grabbed my daughter to leave. But that was basically the scene. But of course, I sort of said, "Joe, do you mind if I have a huge thing of popcorn and Coke in my hand and I spill it all over everybody?"
There you go.
Gremlins 2 is one I'm gonna take a look
really
at.
Fun to shoot. I had so much fun doing that.
Yeah, what was your thoughts of Gremlins 2 now?
Well, I've only seen it once, and that
Same
was
here.
30 years ago. So, to be honest, I don't have really strong memories of it. I just remember meeting Hulk in a lobby and having a scene with him there. I remember pouring popcorn all over the people in front of me, and about all I remember. I would have to see it again.
I don't remember too much of Gremlins 2 either, to be honest with you. I just remember...
It's based on a spoof, you know?
Yeah, I don't remember too much of it at all. I mean, you can ask me anything about the original, I remember that. But the second one, I've only ever seen it once. And all I remember was when they're acting like Gene Simmons or something like that. There's a sequence where
there's a lot of silly sequences.
Yeah, there's some sequence with they're acting like Gene Simmons, and it made me laugh. But yeah, I don't remember it too much.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Hulk. You mean Hulk Hogan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a little improv scene with him, and I can't quite even remember why or how that happens, but I do.
Yes. And of course, you were in Small Soldiers.
Small Soldiers, yes, that was like the highest I've been paid in the shortest time on set. You know, what's fun about Small Soldiers, and I didn't realize at the time, is I'm one of the few humans in it.
Wow.
Mainly just animated CGI people, I guess, or whatever. Yeah, Joe wanted to, keep using us over and over in his films, so I really love to play characters, so it was like, okay, can I put rollers in my hair and do this whole thing? He said, of course,
It's been so long since I've seen Small Soldiers, I actually don't remember you in it.
I just yell, shut up, or something.
Okay.
I remember you now.
And I got rollers in my hair. And it is one line. In fact, I was literally on set 11 minutes.
Oh.
I remember your character now. It's been so long since I've seen that too. I had to think about it for a second. I remember the character.
Say, bring me upstairs. He says, okay, just yell blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. So I do it, and he goes, cut. That's a wrap. I said, wait a minute. Don't you want me to do it again? He said, why? It was perfect.
So you didn't get to work with Kirsten Dunst, huh?
I didn't get to work with anybody.
Small Soldiers.
You don't see Joe Dante much anymore, and he was such an innovative filmmaker.
He's shooting a million Hawaii Five-O's.
Oh, that's what he's doing. See, I don't watch television.
In fact,
Yeah.
he put my clip from the Howling in a Hawaii Five-O.
Okay.
And I got paid like I was a working actor in it. It's
Oh,
so
there you
funny.
go.
I just got a residual from it, too. It just re-aired, I guess.
So, you still like I noticed on IMDb you had, I think the last credit they got you listed as Small Soldiers. Are you still working as an actor?
I have not been. I became a foster parent many years ago and opened an acting workshop, and I really didn't want to move around anymore. I just sort of got involved in doing other things and teaching and being a parent myself, and now I'm really involved in painting and writing and trying to publish a book of rock and roll. I shot throughout those years. I shot a lot of rock and roll concerts, and I've always got my finger in some place or another, doing something or another, So It's an ever-moving river.
What kind of concerts did you, when you said rock and roll, is there any specific bands you shot concerts?
One of my best friends was Don Gooch from Canada, who was the sound engineer for Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Oh, yes.
And so, whenever they would play anywhere, he'd say, hey, drive up to Santa Barbara with me. They're playing up there. I don't want to drive alone, I say, okay, can I bring my camera? Because I can't sit still for a concert. I mean, I love the music and everything, but I'm not a person who can sit there and go, oh, wow, that's nice. I mean, I can't. I have to be doing something. So I would bring my camera and shoot. And so for 30 years, I've been shooting all these mainly Cause concerts because they were mainly Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and wherever they were playing, he was usually the engineer for it. And I've just never shown them to anybody, and he used to say, you've got to put a book together. These pictures are great. But in the meantime, I'm standing next to people like Henry Diltz and Lynn Goldsmith and these major rock and roll photographers, and I'm just an actor, who can't sit still. So I really didn't feel like I should even show anybody my pictures, even though I thought, oh, these are nice, But 30 years later, I began to look at them, and they were, like, a couple of them starting to mildew, and I'm like, okay, it's now or never. It's do or die. I have to do it, at least digitize them.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
I actually hired Bert Gordon's daughter, Christina Gordon, to come and digitize my over 9,000 slides, a very grueling task, which she did an amazing job of. And I put together this book called Rockin' the Causes, and I'm trying to find a publisher for it.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, I've got to see that. I'm
that'd be amazing.
Big fan of...
It is, actually. I mean, it's very exciting, and it's a really cool book. And, I want to sort of further... one of the causes that they did a Doobie Brothers reunion for the Vietnam vets. And now there used to be an association called the Vietnam Veterans Association, but now it's called the Veterans Association because it's obviously more than just that war. And I have a friend who heads that, and I've talked to him about I'd like to take a percentage of if the book sells, I would like to give back to.
Oh, that's fantastic! I'm a big fan of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
And mainly those concerts were them and Jackson Browne and Doobie Brothers and Bonnie Raitt and James Taylor, and I shot the 5 nights at the Muse concerts, which was everybody, everybody played that concert, and it was 5 nights, and it was at least 5 hours a night, so it was pretty amazing, and Alliance for Survival, and a lot of different. They're all Cause concerts, mainly Cause concerts, and even the ones that aren't. Most of these songs that became the beat of our generation are songs about causes. Whether they're causes of the heart or causes of the environment or whatever.
Have you actually got a chance to meet Neil Young?
I have never met Neil, no, but Graham I have, and David I have, and Stephen,
It's interesting because Howard Stern just last year got Neil Young for the first time on his show. And I think Neil Young, if I get the story right, was reluctant to go on the Howard Stern show, but Howard was trying to learn how to play guitar. And he was trying to sing Neil Young songs. And I think Neil Young was kind of touched by that, and he finally came on the Stern show.
That sounds like Neil Young.
And Neil Young was like, this is not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Well, a couple years ago, Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue went on Howard Stern, and they did the interview and all that, and it was fun. And Nikki gave him a copy of a guitar that they made for the Heroin Diaries, and Howard tried to play that guitar, and he was just plucking along to it and picking it. He says, "Is this how it's played?" And the thing was completely out of tune. Yeah, it was quite an interesting aspect to see. The whole guitar was out of tune, and Howard attempted to play it.
Well, he's not supposed to be a guitar player, right?
But he
sort of thrown into the spot there.
Yeah, but Neil Young come on. He was talking about solar-powered cars and stuff like that. Like, he's kind of got his hand into a lot of interesting stuff.
I should hope so.
Yes.
The man's a genius, and the man is a good hurler. I remember when the first time I heard "Rocket in the Free World," it got burnt into my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, you say today you go to a screening. What do you go see?
Well, I'm a member of the Academy, and they're on the weekends they show four different shows. So I don't actually know what it is today, but I was hoping to be able to go since I wasn't teaching. It kind of changed up my day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we was very, very happy to have you come on here and talk to us.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really nice.
It's an absolute pleasure. You are a doll.
How is your weather up there right now? Now, are you going into fall? I was near Albany. I was in Verona, New York, upstate New York, a couple of weeks ago, actually, and you could just see the leaves just starting to change. But you're further north and more east, so.
Yeah, we're the Great White North. We are, we're right beside Nova Scotia.
Is it snowing yet?
No, not yet, but it's starting. Like last week was just scorching hot, and I hate the heat. And this week here, I've kind of went from because now it is kind of chilly out. And in our Canadian weather, our Canadian winter's starting to come soon.
Oh, God.
Starting to get a little chilly
it's
out
getting
there.
a little chilly out there, and I'm just loving it.
There you go. See,
Yeah.
you guys like it sort of below zero, I guess, right?
I do, yeah. I hate the heat. I'm not a heat person at all, Belinda.
I have Canadian friends. I know, They're like, it's too hot out, Are you kidding? It's above zero, you mean?
I'm the kind of guy that walks outside with a jacket on in the wintertime and no hat.
As soon as I hear the word oot, I know already like it's sub-zero.
Oot, yeah. Hey?
Hey, yeah.
Have you ever been up this way in Canada, up in the New Brunswick area?
Not on the east side, no.
Well, you have to come join us in the studio here. Eh?
Yeah, I would like to go to, I'd like to go to Montreal. I'd like to go to, any of those.
That's where I'm from, Montreal.
Really?
I am from Montreal.
Ontario, I'd like to go, it's very beautiful up there.
A Quebecer who says "hey."
According to Internet Movie Database, and Shilo was telling me this coming into town. You're from Inglewood, California.
Yes.
Born and raised. Well, my dad was a jockey, so the home racetrack was Sandy Newton Racetrack in Hollywood Park.
I've been to Van Nuys, California, and Hollywood, and that was a treat and a half. Inglewood? What's Inglewood like?
It was the closest hospital to Arcadia.
Oh.
Which is where my dad rode. My dad was a jockey, so like I was saying, he rode at the Sandy Newton Racetrack, which is in Arcadia. But the closest hospital back in 100 years ago when I was born was Centinela Hospital in Inglewood.
What's Inglewood like now? Compared to that different time.
They just took Hollywood Park out of there, so it's not the same.
No, I figure it's definitely changed on quite a bit. California's definitely changed a lot. I think the most in the last 30 years.
California is beautiful.
Yeah.
I personally love it here. I just think the weather couldn't be better, and
more cold.
You have every kind of tree on every street. There's just so much diversity, and there's so much culture and so much opportunity. It's hard to not like.
I've been in Burbank, Santa Barbara, Hollywood, Van Nuys, and Sherwood Oaks.
And Inglewood also too is I know the name because it's mentioned in Pulp Fiction a couple of times.
Which name?
Inglewood,
California. It's where the Samuel
Harvey Keitel says, "Where you guys from?" Inglewood, Redondo. Fellas, get a cab.
I love Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, he's absolutely great. Pulp Fiction is one of my all-time favorite movies. I quote the whole thing.
I love Harvey Keitel. I don't know what to say. Just love
Well,
him.
it's
He's
interesting.
Winston Wolfe.
It's interesting with Pulp Fiction because one of the scenes that Quentin Tarantino cut out of the movie, and he said it was the scene he was most reluctant to cut, was a scene with Dick Miller. Dick Miller had a scene with Harvey Keitel.
Well, see, and Quentin always said he grew up in Joe Dante films, but I've never met him. I understand he's a great fan of Joe's.
Oh,
Yes.
he's the one who's the fan of the most things you wouldn't think he's a fan of. When you go and read something, and all of a sudden it says Tarantino's name, it's like, oh, what? That was his favorite movie or one of them? You never even would have known that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's very much
quite
spontaneous.
The film buff, he is.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned culture and whatnot, and so much today in movies is CGI and so fakery. One of the things I loved, especially in The Howling, was the locations were so beautiful. Like even when they went to the adult video store where the crime first happened with Dee Wallace when she was in that booth.
It was very
I
sinister.
love stuff like that.
I know.
It is very sinister.
I hear more. Every guy loves that scene. I have to admit, it's very effective. But literally, I run from Mendocino, which is Northern California, through Griffith Park, which is here in Los Angeles, on through Big Bear.
Los Angeles is nice.
Here. If you being from the country, you might notice the difference in trees. But because we didn't have enough running shots, they kept pulling me back and saying, let's drive up here and we'll run through this, and let's drive over here and we'll run through that. And so there's literally, I've run through the entire state of California.
As I said, I've been to Los Angeles. It's quite nice out there.
Yes, it really is. It's beautiful, and so is Northern California, too.
Yeah, North Hollywood was nice. I actually went looking for the Rainbow Bar and Grill. And I'm a musician.
I know it well on Sunset here.
Yeah, I'm a musician, so I'm a bass player, and I went looking for the Rainbow Bar and Grill, and I found it. And I was desperately trying to meet Lemmy, but it never happened. And I figured he'd be there drunk or eating red meat or smoking cigarettes.
Looking for my ex-boyfriend, okay? Anyway.
Where is he? I'm sitting there at the grill thinking, he's always here. That's why his apartment is around the corner, wherever the hell that is. He's always here.
You always expect Tom Waits to be at Duke's. Too.
Yeah, and and he never showed up. And I remember saying to the bartender, "Is Lemmy around?" And he goes, "No." I thought, oh, what the hell? I'm from Canada, and I
came all the way down here to see him.
Yeah, that was a part of it. I'm standing in Los Angeles, and I thought, oh, wait a minute. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in California. And it just kind of drilled into my brain there for a second. I thought, I'm going to the bar and grill. So I thought I'd, meet all these bass-playing heroes of mine, like Flea and all those guys, and Anthony Kiedis.
Like fixtures. They're supposed to be sitting there.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, oh, wait, Lemmy's got to be there. If you've seen the movie Lemmy, he's a badass. And he wasn't there, and I sat there for like 4 hours drinking scotch and smoking cigars, thinking I'm a badass like Lemmy. It's just not happening. It was a fun experience, but it was a little heartbreaking too.
I was going to say, do you have The Howling on Blu-ray by any chance?
I do, unopened in cellophane, yes.
Because I'm going to tell you, there's a wonderful little documentary on it where I forget the name of the fella, but he goes around to the locations of where it was shot all these years later, and he shows you where everybody was sitting or where this and that took place, even some of your scenes.
I know, I have to open that thing and watch it. I swear, I do.
Don't you love the beautiful cover art they put on that, the illustrations?
It's interesting to me how they change covers. I'm so prone towards the original poster of the Howling.
Yeah, I agree.
Too. I agree.
Where'd the claw through it?
Hard, to look at new covers and go, oh wow! You go, what happened to the cover?
That's one thing that drives me bonkers.
It's kind of like when you go to the screening of a film you shot. You realize you never see the film as an actor. All you see is what's on the floor. You're like, oh my God, what happened to that scene?
Yes.
Wait a minute, where's my close-up for when I said blah, blah, blah?
It's one thing that drives me bonkers, Belinda, is when they change the poster art like that. The original poster art for The Howling, if I'm not mistaken, is on the DVD and the Blu-ray, where it's got the claw through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. And I remember seeing a DVD copy of it somewhere here, and the poster, the case art was completely different. And I remember looking at the fellow and said, is this the original Howling? He goes, yeah, it's a reissue. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, no.
It just always does that to me, too.
It really, really upset me. And I looked at him and was like, this is not, like, is this like a region 2 or 3 or something? He goes, no,
What's so fascinating, too, is you go to these conventions and people walk in with posters from, Newfoundland or from Paris or from Spain or from, Piranha from Germany or, and they're like these completely different posters that you can't even imagine, that are for your film.
Right, and it really drives me wild. The original poster signified the film, in my humble opinion, and that's what needs to stick.
I was in Paris, all right, and I was staying at this little place on the Champs-Élysées, and across from me was a movie theater, and I don't know, I saw something there, I don't know what it said, right, and so I'm there like for 4 days, and when I got back from my whole trip in Europe, I'm talking to Joe, and he's like, well, the Howling was playing in Paris, and I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, it's not called the Howling there, it's called the Hurlemans or something like this. I said, oh my God, that was the movie in my hotel.
It's in French. I believe it's Le Sacrament.
I don't know what it was. It was something else. It was just not what I thought it was, and I had no idea that it was my film. I would have loved to go watch myself speak French.
Yeah. See, the thing with French movies is it's a dub over. And like myself as a film, yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. An English film with a French dub is just a piss off. Like
God, I would love it. Are you kidding?
It's so hard sometimes. Like there's one film I do know, and I had to watch it in French with some friends of mine who don't speak English. And there's a sequence in the movie where a guinea pig is on the floor, and he goes, "Les hamster, les hamster." And I'm like, what the hell? It's a guinea pig. And my friend looked at me once, and the Little Mermaid, Sebastian is a crab, and she goes, "No, le homard," and homard is lobster. And I thought, what the hell? No, he's a crab. He's a Caribbean crab. And she goes, "No, he's a lobster." And I had to listen to the French track to it, and I'm like, this is screwed up.
Well, I'm going to be in Germany in a month and a half. And I've been told that, they've got the Howling and me in German, speaking German, and, all these different, I can't wait to see them me speak different languages.
I'll tell you, when you hear them speak Spanish, like,
That's
I watched Anaconda in Spanish, and I'm going to tell you, it goes from being a adventure thriller to a comedy, just the moment.
Yeah, I have some friends of mine that are from Mexico and only speak Spanish, and, being from Montreal, it's very diverse. And I had to watch the movie Scream in Spanish. And, oh, man, you talk about a horror movie. That was not a horror movie. That turned into a comedy too fast. And they're sitting there watching it, and I'm laughing. And they're looking at me going, what the hell? And I just never mind. Yeah, it was a comedy real fast.
Right.
Yep. I didn't mention this with the Howling. I got listed Robert Picardo. What was he like?
Well, he still is, and he's wonderful. Bob's a very good friend of mine. I've known Bob for 30, 40 years now. But I had originally seen Bob Picardo in a play called Tribute with Jack Lemmon playing his son at the Huntington Hartford. And he was such a wonderful actor in this play that years later, when I heard that he was going to be playing the Eddie Prince part in The Howling, I was like, oh my God, I'm such a fan of his, And so when I met him, all I could talk about was this performance that I saw him do in Tribute. That was just so brilliantly wonderful and delicious. And so we were really good friends. And I'm a perfect straight man for Bob because he's really funny. And we've improv'd our way through multiple films.
Yes, he played.
There's a whole scene in the foyer of the church in the Amazon Women in the Moon, where he and I were sitting there waiting for them to set up the 5-camera live thing for the roast inside the church. So we're sitting out there, and we can't sit still. Neither one of us. We're both like just changing shots, right, and trading all this, just saying all this stuff, right. So Joe comes and he goes, "Okay, we're ready to shoot. Let's go." And Bob goes, "Wait, you should listen to this, right?" He says, "Come on, let's do it for him." So he and I did this little improv for Joe, and he goes, "Oh my God, bring the cameras out here. Let's shoot it." And you'll see it. It's the foyer scene in the right before we go into the church. It's hysterical. I mean, he's just so funny. Do you know? And Joe is so good about allowing that creativity and listening to what works for the film, what doesn't work for the film. I mean, if you're hanging a left and it's just some arbitrary scene, he's not going to allow it in. But because, we tend to come up with things that are right on and further the situation or the scene, he allows it. Like in Piranha, that whole moonlight scene was basically Paul Bartel and I had come from Cannonball, and we're sitting there in San Marcos, Texas, going, Joe, we don't have a scene together. Joe, we want to have a scene together. Joe, come on, we're both here and we don't have a scene together. Finally, we bugged him so much, he looks at me and he goes, fine, then write one. Because I had done that before, right? So I went and I wrote that moonlight scene, and he shot it. And to me, it's one of the best scenes. It's like that turning point in Piranha. I can't imagine Piranha without that scene.
And of course, Patrick McNee just passed away not too long ago. Noticed that on your Facebook.
Yeah.
You liked him, huh?
Oh, I was so thrilled to be working with the Avenger, Patrick McNee. It was like, oh my gosh, I used to watch the Avengers all the time. So I actually, in this scene that I have with him, I was so excited about working with him that on the first take, I literally fell off the desk. And Joe used it in the bloopers, I think, or something. I mean, it's like Joe, but he knew how nervous I was. I was just like, oh my God, it's Patrick McNee. I ended up sitting on the edge of the thing, and I just almost fell on my face.
You had mentioned Jack Lemmon. Is he someone you actually have met before?
I did meet him, yes. I met him at a private party with some friends of Max Gale and Scanlon and a bunch of theater people, friends of mine.
He was one of my...
He was there. Actually, they came from Tribute, but we were there from another theater. But a bunch of different people came together for this party, and he actually asked me to dance. So I had this amazing dance with Jack Lemmon.
Oh, you're lucky. He was one of my favorite actors. He was so funny.
Delicious man ever.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Grumpy Old Men is one of my all-time favorite films. That is a movie that will drop me to my knees. When Walter Matthau is driving in his little truck and he almost runs the guy off the road, he says, watch it, bonehead. It drops me to my knees, and then he puts the fish in the back of his car. He goes, what the hell? And Gustafson. Oh, as soon as I hear that, I drop to my knees.
Story, if you want to hear it.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
So Nick Nolte and I are walking through Universal because he's going to loop, let me see, I think it was Rich Man, Poor Man or something or another. And he's like, come on, BB, come with me, because he and I were doing Picnic together at the Mount Theater. So anyway, we're walking through Universal, and we're with another friend of his, and the three of us are sort of doing our Mod Squad walk through, and this car pulls up in front of us onto the lot and parks, and out hops Walter Matthau, right? And I went, oh my God, Nolte, it's Walter Matthau. Walter, who I guess heard me, turns around and goes, Walter Matthau? Where? He says, he starts looking all over.
Oh, I would have too. I would have went absolutely nuts too. If Walter Matthau was in the same room as me, I didn't know. That would, yeah. A grumpy old man and grumpier old man are hilarious.
He goes, Walter Matthau, where?
Did you meet him as well?
Yes, no, he was the one that said it.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, I would have went nuts if I was in the same room as Walter Matthau, too. Those two guys had the best chemistry I've ever seen out of two male actors.
Moments that you can't replace.
Well, that's what Grumpy Old Men is. And, even the second one, it's not as good, but that little the fight that they have with the fishing rods, your dog crapped on my lawn again. It's just so funny, and it's just so comical, and it works.
There is nothing they did that wasn't just to die for.
Well, I absolutely love The Odd Couple as well. That was hilarious.
Another interesting story with Walter Matthau, and I feel bad about this, is he was originally supposed to be cast as the lead in the 7-Year Itch with Marilyn Monroe. And nothing against Tom Ewell, but I saw the audition of Walter Matthau to do this movie, and I think he was so much better than Tom Ewell in the part, but because of the studio, I think it was, they wouldn't let him have Walter Matthau.
A very old story that happens time and a million times again, and they should actually produce these audition tapes. I'm telling you, because we've all done auditions that were so brilliant and still didn't get the part, and it's like, and you see who gets it, and you go, what? Why?
Yeah, and you scratch your head and wonder why.
I'll never
There's some real talent out there.
It's just, you never can make sense out of any of it, but it's, it's what it is.
Yeah, I guess so.
We've been on the phone like an hour and a half.
Yes, we have.
We have. I'm going to have to sort of get off of here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I got just a couple of things first before we do, if that's okay. Number one, I would love to get an autographed picture of you. Where do I go about to do that?
You can go to my website, actually, which is belindabalaski.com.
Okay.
And hopefully you should be able to order through there or email me about what you want through there or through the Facebook thing, because I don't have every picture that's up there, but I do have most all of them. So if you let me know first, then I can always let you know if I really have it or not.
It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Belinda. You're a doll. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. When do you think you might...
What's that?
When do you think you might air this? Or how
It'll air next...
Well, we got one that's got to air next week, so I'm thinking probably the week after. But if we can get this on a flash drive here today, I could have this to you soon.
Well, just let me know.
And you could put it on your Facebook, and you could put it on your web page, wherever you want to put it.
Yes, just let me know, all right?
Yeah. Would you do a plug for our show before you go?
Sure. Am I still on the air?
Yeah, you're still on the air.
All right. What would you like me to say?
Just say your name and say you're listening to CHSR in Fredericton, New Brunswick.
Oh, good heavens. You want me to actually say? I'm going to have to write that down. Say it one more time. CH what?
CHSR. And
you're listening to CHSR.
Yeah.
And where are you?
Yep. Say, and the show is Python's Paradise.
Piped on to Paradise.
Python's Paradise. My DJ name is Python.
Oh, Python.
Yeah, like the snake.
I'm not doing very well, am I?
That's okay, dear.
You're okay.
I don't know. See, this is why Joe thought I might blow the audition. I don't know.
Nah, I don't think so. I think you succeeded
anyway,
wonderfully.
It's been really fun talking to you.
Yes,
okay.
You too, dear.
Okay, here's say the promo. We'll give you a space here.
Oh God! Well, you have to say the whole thing again because I have no idea.
All right.
Say your name and say you're listening to CHSR in Fredericton, New Brunswick.
And Frederick in New Brunswick, CHSR. Okay, thank you, Belinda Balaski on CHSR in New Brunswick,
Canada.
Canada.
Perfect.
Belinda, we absolutely love you. Thank you so much for coming on here. And remember,
It's been funny.
yes, it was a blessing. And I'll message you about Marilyn Ross as well.
Oh yes. Okay, terrific.
Okay.
Have a good day.
God bless
You
and
too.
thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye bye.
Yep. Bye.